Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Hello. I'm just waiting for a couple of seconds. We're currently live. And I'm currently sitting with Kieran and Olivier, a virtual offer holiday activity at the School of Computer Science. So we're going to jump straight into it by introducing ourselves. So hello, everyone. I'm Olivier Simonezic. I am a lecturer at the School of Computer Science. I'm teaching games programming, physics simulation. I'm also the admission tutor for the School of Computer Science. My research background is I'm doing a lot of developer stuff at the moment with digital board games. I'm also looking at crowd simulation, crowd AI. I'm also looking at indoor location systems. And I'm not alone. I'm also with Kieran Hicks sitting next to me. Hello, Kieran.
Hiya. So thanks for that lovely introduction. So my name is Dr. Kieran Hicks. I'm the program lead for the Games Computing program here at the University of Lincoln. I typically teach on a lot of the games development modules. I have some background in the industry, and I do a lot of research around games and accessibility and how we can basically design more positive player experience in games. As my kind of role as program lead, I'm responsible for making sure the course is healthy and that we're kind of preparing you with all the skill sets you need to kind of move into the games industry.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. And as you guys noticed, we're not on our own in this stream. We're joined by two students. We're joined by Luke Flack and Ali. Would you like to say a couple of words about yourselves, Luke and Ali?
Well, as the slide says, I'm a third-year computer science student, games computing student. I'm doing my dissertation project on procedural generation of quests, so the content that you'd see in a quest. And I am the president of the Computer Science Society, which kind of shows how similar the two courses actually are.
Yep, that is brilliant. Ali, your turn. Do you want to say a couple of words about yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm Ali. I graduated from the computer science course in 2020. I'm now doing my MSc in computer science by research, so it's just one big research project. And I'm focusing on human-computer interaction and user experience design and sort of how we can motivate people using mobile apps.
That is brilliant. Thank you very much. So what we're going to do today at the Virtual Offer Holder Day, we're going to talk about, welcome to Lincoln to start with. Then we're going to jump into the School of Computer Science, talk about it. We're going to do a little tour of the Isaac Newton building where we're currently sitting. Then we're going to talk about the programs. We're going to talk about games computing, about CS. And after all of that, we're giving you the opportunity to ask us a couple of questions about CS, about games computing. So you can ask any questions using the chat, and we'll make sure to answer them towards the end.
Worth pointing out, those questions can also just be about university life or other aspects that aren't specifically related to the two courses we're talking about today.
Yep, so don't be afraid to use the chat to interact with us. So, welcome to Lincoln. Welcome to Lincoln, everybody. I'd like to invite you all to discover Lincoln, which is a beautiful cathedral, medieval and modern city in the East Midlands of the UK. We've got landmarks such as the Lincoln Castle, which was built in the 11th century, and Lincoln Cathedral, which has got over 1,000 years of history. Yeah, Lincoln Cathedral in the center of that picture that I've got is one of the most spectacular Gothic buildings in the world. It is an iconic landmark that has been standing there for centuries, and it has been one of the tallest buildings in the world for over 200 years. In the evening, the cathedral is lit up by endless LEDs that represents different seasons, different events. For instance, it was lit up in blue and yellow to support and show solidarity for the events in Ukraine. On the picture that I've got on the slide, it shows the Christmas market. And the Christmas market is an event that happens every year. It has got over 150 stalls set around the cathedral, set in the castle square, in the castle ground, all around it. And there's plenty of stalls with a range of food, local gifts, local things. It's a brilliant event to visit.
Yes, worth coming to Lincoln just for that.
Lincoln itself is a bit of a hidden gem in the UK. It's centered in the East Midlands, as you can see on the map, and it's squeezed in between larger cities like Nottingham, York, Sheffield. It's a lovely city that is not too big. It got over 2,000 years of history, and it's considered one of the friendliest cities in the UK to live in. It's a brilliant city. I've been living here for about 15 years and absolutely love it. I've been seeing it getting bigger, growing, more buildings, things changing all the time, getting modernized. I absolutely love living here. Kieran, you've been living here for
11 years.
11
now.
years.
Yeah.
That's quite a while.
Yeah, I'd echo most of your sentiments. Right, it's an absolutely lovely city to live in.
Yep. And Luke, aren't you from close to Norwich, a little village is actually a city, I would say, Lowestoft?
Yes, Lowestoft, furthest east point of the country. You can actually see it on that map, just about.
Yep.
Under
And
Great
Ali, you're from Milton Keynes,
Yes, just near London.
near London. Any words about Milton Keynes? You don't sound that excited about it.
No, I have no words about Milton Keynes.
Oh.
Lincoln is a significant improvement. I really like it.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. That's fantastic. So where are you guys from in the chat? If you can just quickly tell us where you're from. By the way, I've just been told as well that there's a little delay between what we say and the chat. But don't worry, try to answer the question. Where are you guys from? Are you from Birmingham, Sheffield, somewhere nearby? It's always cool knowing where you guys are from. So yeah, back to Lincoln. At the center of the city, we've got the Brayford Pool, as shown on the picture on the left-hand side. It is a lake that has been formed by a widening of the river. It was used as a port by Romans. There's actually a little story, a little legend that was dug up by prisoners from the Vikings. It's a little story, Yep, it's not on Wikipedia, but it's a little story that you hear locally. Yep, a folktale. And it was used by Romans, and it has a long historical heritage. Nowadays, the Brayford Pool is home to a wide range of hotels, restaurants, bars, entertainment venues, brilliant nightclubs as well. And there's a modern university as well nearby, the University of Lincoln. There are numerous events on the waterfront, including vehicle displays, music events. The Lincoln Pride is there. There's also carnival parades, etc. Plenty of events.
Yeah, so I think it's worth finding, even though Lincoln is quite a small city, there's near enough always an event kind of happening every weekend, and they typically tend to be located kind of on the Brayford, which is kind of just opposite the main campus.
Yep, that's brilliant, because from the Brayford Pool, what you can do, you can head towards the city center, go through a place that is called the Glory Hall. Now, I'm not making things up. If you look up online, if you look up Lincoln and Glory Hall, you'll see it's an old building, a lovely little area. And from there, from the high street, you can go to Steep Hill, also shown in the picture, which is a street in the city. The name comes from the gradient of the hill. It's about 14% to go up there. Yeah, it's quite tricky. I see endless people out of breath trying to go on the top of the hill. Along the hill, you see plenty of historical shops, lots of tea rooms, pubs. It's a really popular area for tourists, actually very picturesque, and I recommend, if you visit Lincoln, to at least check the steep hill.
Yeah, it's certainly worth having a little walk up there if you pop into Lincoln, if only to say you've conquered Steep Hill. It's one of the steepest pedestrianised areas in the UK, for what that's worth.
Yep. At the top, what you'll find is endless independent shops, lots of boutiques in the cathedral quarter, right next to the cathedral, which will give you a unique shopping experience in that area. Also, close that area, you'll find lots of other main attractions, lots of shops. Basically, a fantastic day out. It's brilliant. Also worth mentioning that Lincoln has captured the imagination of game designers. So, for instance, you'll find Lincoln being reproduced in Age of Empires 4 as part of a couple of missions. You also find it in the newest Assassin's Creed. What is it called again?
Oh,
God,
I'll
put it on the spot. Valhalla. Of course,
I wanted to say that. I thought it was wrong.
I wasn't sure anymore. Yes. And recently, the cathedral area was closed off because it was used for filming. Actually, you were able to spot Ridley Scott and Joaquin Phoenix filming Napoleon there. So it's brilliant to see that our little city is being used and recognized internationally. I mentioned the Brayford Pool earlier because that's where the university is, the city center. It's a city center campus. You'll find all accommodation for students around that particular campus. So, for instance, Luke, you lived not too far from the campus, didn't you? Somewhere in the south of the campus?
I lived in Valentine Courts, which is, if on the map shown there, it's, I think, the furthest bright blue one at the bottom.
That is true,
it's
yeah.
also the one in the image in the top center there. Staying there
Yep.
2 years, I never really had any issues.
It took you about 15 minutes to walk to the university. Yep. That is something great to have a city center university campus.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to jump in here because I think that's one of the things we probably can't oversell enough is just how nice it is having a city centrally located campus that then is basically surrounded by pretty much all of the student accommodation, meaning it's fairly easy to kind of rock up out of your bed at 5 to 9 and then walk to your lecture in those 5 minutes and still be on time. I think that's a fantastic thing, right? It beats having to take the bus or the train or somewhere to get to your lessons.
It works
Yep.
the other way as well. So if you sort of live on campus, so I lived in Signet Wharf in my first year, and that's obviously right in the middle of campus. And so everything's easy to get to on campus, obviously, but it's nice that town is only sort of a 10-minute walk away as well.
That's fantastic. Yep. You can also visit the campus virtually. And it is available online. You find the link at the bottom of the page. And what it is, you'll find a pirate-themed version of the campus. It's being used for a PhD project. Can you say a couple of words about that project?
So I can. So one of our PhD students, Danny, she's basically working on making a game that lets you explore the Lincoln campus before you end up coming here to see it physically. And she's kind of recreated it as a pirate imagined campus. But it's really nice because it actually still lets you walk around the campus to scale. And so all the buildings, this building we're in now, the Isaac Newton building, that's there and replicated. And so is all the other buildings. It's a good way of kind of getting a feel for what the campus is like, albeit with a pirate tinge, which potentially is more interesting.
Yep. So don't be afraid to follow the link and download Lincoln Island. And we'll also share the link.
Just to add on to Lincoln Island, you can interact with all of the characters walking throughout it, and the majority of them are real people and the comments they've made.
Oh, that's true, because Kieran, you exist in.
Yeah, I think I exist in there. I can't remember what Danny's had me say in there, but it probably is something that I've said at least once. And there's a bunch of other kind of academics and students that are recreated in Lincoln Island. As Luke said, they have phrases or useful bits of information that they would normally tell you in person and face to face.
Fantastic. So, when you start your studies at the University of Lincoln, the first larger event you'll come across is Freshers Week, often referred to as Welcome Week. It is an incredibly busy time filled with social events, fair, and a couple of admin tasks like signing up for things, etc., paperwork, etc., etc. The purpose, though, of Freshers Week is to give you the chance to make new friends and settle into surrounding before lectures begin. And we also got plenty of events during that first week of university. So you get to meet staff members, you get to meet us, you get to meet your colleagues, other people who are also doing the same course as you, who are in the same boat as you. And you get also introduced to personal tutoring. You're being shown things around the university, being told how regulations work, basically all the stuff to ensure that your first week at the University of Lincoln is the best week of first year at the university. I've got a couple of pictures here. For instance, that's the Freshers Fair. No, that's the Societies Fair, where we've got endless societies running at university. So, for instance, we've got the CSS Society. Actually, it's the Computer Science Society, not the CSS Society.
You see Luke in the picture as well.
Yep, you can see Luke, the president, who actually promoted the societies of the year. And you can also see other stores. You can see, for instance, a store for the Tabletop Society, another store for the Sports Society. There's plenty of societies. There's always a society for any interest that you're into. And if you can't find the societies, you can always create your own society and find other people who are also interested in
someone actually did this year for
cybersecurity,
hacking and cybersecurity. Yes.
Yeah, so one of our first year students, they came to Lincoln and they were looking for some sort of cybersecurity society. It didn't currently exist. So instead, they basically decided, right, I'm going to start one. So they went around and found some like-minded kind of peers, across all 3 years of the undergrad degrees. And then they've started that society, and now it's successfully running and has a couple of events lined up, which is fantastic.
So as I mentioned, University of Lincoln is one of the top 150 universities in the world. And it has been also voted the Modern University of the Year a couple of years ago. And also it's one of the top 20 UK universities for student experiences. We also got a gold standard for teaching, which is brilliant. And we've also got a 5-star rating. Absolutely brilliant. So we've got all the ratings, everything needed to say that we are a fantastic university. So part of the university is the School of Computer Science, which is part of the College of Science. Yeah, that's correct. Yes. And what we are doing at the School of Computer Science, we've got a couple of programs running. We've got a couple of undergraduate programs, stuff like computer science. We've got MCOM Computer Science, Computer Games Computing, and MCOM Games Computing. We've also got MSCs in Mathematics and Computer Science. We've also got MSCs in Robotics, MSCs in Computer Science, MSCs in Games Development and Design. We've also got a couple more courses coming up for next year, don't we?
Yep, we're not allowed to talk about this yet.
Not yet. I'm sorry. Yeah. Still being worked on. And when you join the University of Lincoln, you're going to work with internationally recognized experts in robotics, in machine learning, in computer vision, in games development, in human-computer interaction. So, for instance, here I've got our staff members who are part of the INT Lab, which focuses on research on interactive technologies. We've got other staff members part of the LCAS, which is the Lincoln Center for Autonomous Systems, are mostly working on robotic stuff. We've got a staff member part of the LOVE research group, which is the laboratory for vision engineering, mostly looking at how to extract information from pictures, for instance, pictures of eyes, to identify possible illnesses that are maybe developing. And we've got the MLearn group, which is the machine learning group. So both Kieran and I are part of the INT Lab, Interactive Technologies Lab.
Sure. Yep. And so I think it's worth kind of highlighting. The reason we tell you this is because a lot of the staff here are world-leading researchers in their field, and that research feeds directly into what we teach you, and how we design our modules, and the kind of we make sure we're bringing the state of the art, the cutting edge of computer science and games development, and we're bringing that forward into our lessons, and into our lectures, into our modules. And I think if you kind of that's one of the unique selling points of Lincoln, is we have a very research heavy profile, and then that research feeds into what we're doing in our courses.
Also, when you join the School of Computer Science as a student, what you'll get is a multifaceted approach that will teach you not only about computer science, but also about all the stuff, all the programming about, for instance, if you do games computing, you'll learn about games design, render pipeline, games engine, player experiences. If you do computer science, you're going to learn about networking, you're going to learn about machine learning, AI, a lot of relevant stuff. We're going to talk about the programmers in a couple of minutes. Also, when you join the School of Computer Science, you're going to benefit from dedicated state-of-the-art facilities, including VR spaces, high-specs machine, kits for real-time motion detection capture, network labs, etc., etc., etc. Also, our labs, we've got brilliant modern machines with 11th generation Intel 5. We've got NVIDIA graphics card, 360s, 370s with SSD drives. We've got 16 gigabyte of DDR4 memories, basically top-range machines. Actually, some of these machines, I'm a bit jealous because they're better than what I've got
machines
at home. They're brilliant machines. And all of that is within the Isaac Newton building. It's a brand new building. I'm not going to talk too much about it because instead of showing you pictures of the Isaac Newton building, what we've got is a little tour.
Yeah, we're going to try giving you a tour.
So we're going to do a live tour of the building. Well, only little, not the entire building, only areas that are relevant for this tour / presentation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab the camera and do a live tour of the building. So let's see if that
hope this
works.
goes well.
Yep.
Good start.
Yeah, just one moment while they get that set up. We have had a question in the chat, if you can see it, Ali. Robert Suma.
Oh yeah, so for first years, it's about 10 hours of contact time per week. So that includes lectures and workshops. Each workshop is kind of attached to a lecture, and yeah, altogether it's about 10 hours. Oh, they're back. On top of that as well, I will say you are expected to kind of do a lot of independent study as well. So
We'll just switch him to the main view.
We good to go?
there we go.
Yeah, so this is the Isaac Newton building. So right now we're in kind of the entry lobby. So here we have the admin desk, where there's typically staff there that can help with any queries you might have. Then we're going to walk over to the atrium. And so as we're walking, I think it's worth kind of mentioning. So this building we're in now is called the Isaac Newton building. It was opened in 2016, and I think what's really nice about this building, it was basically bespokely built for us as a school of computer science. So it was designed with us in mind. And so not only is it a new flashy building, but it's also a state-of-the-art building for computer science. So here, if I just kind of turn over here, and hopefully you can see we have the atrium. This is kind of the hangout area-ish of the building. So we have a canteen here, which serves kind of hot food daily. We've got some vending machines, and we've got quite a lot of kind of just free space that's used by our students and by our staff, right? Both to eat food, but also just to do work or just kind of congregate in groups and socialize. And during the day, when this is kind of populated, it's a really nice atmosphere, and it's all quite buzzing. And so we're going to go into one of our lecture theatres now, hopefully. This is one of the biggest lecture theatres we have on campus, and it's very fancy. I quite like it. We good? So yeah, this is our lecture theatre, and so if you end up coming to Lincoln, it's highly likely the very first lecture you ever have will be here. It'll be in this room, and it'll be your welcome talk, where we basically welcome you to the uni, and we say, no, thanks for coming, and we tell you everything you need to know. You also will have lectures in here for things like programming fundamentals, and for some of the games modules as well. I'm trying to think, Oliver, is there anything else you think is worthwhile mentioning about this room?
Absolutely,
other than it's fancy.
Absolutely love teaching in this space because there's over 500 seats. We've got giant screens where the presentations are shown, and it's absolutely fantastic to see this room filled with students raising their hands, listening to the lecture and interacting with us. Absolutely love it here. It's a brilliant modern lecture hall, and it is absolutely fantastic for both staff and students.
It's a really comfortable workspace as well. You've got plug sockets under the desks. The chairs are big. You've got a lot of space. They're comfy. It's definitely my favourite lecture theatre that we've got on campus.
Yeah, it almost feels like a cinema is how I describe it.
Yeah,
it does indeed. Nice. Yes, yeah. Actually, I'm aware that some societies use this room for movies in the evening, that they book it through societies and then they watch the movies and then they discuss it. I've also seen some students like the esports society using this room to plug in the Switch and have tournaments.
Smash tournaments.
Smash tournaments, yeah.
Yes, I think that's worth saying, actually. A lot of the space that we have across the uni can be booked out by students, by societies for all kinds of different purposes, right? Such as esports, for some of the game development, game jams, and all kinds of things. Yeah. Fancy room.
Brilliant, yep.
So the other thing I kind of wanted to make sure we show on this tour, at least, is one of the computer labs. So we're just walking over to computer lab 1A. So we have several different computer labs in this building. And so every single computer lab is kitted out with some fancy computers. Once we get in there, I'll actually talk about them a bit more. But again, there's lots of different computers on campus in this building. And something that's really, really impressive and important to us as a school, at least, is that all of our labs are 24-hour access. So, you can come in at 2 a.m. and, work on your game, work on your project, work on whatever. It's always there, right, and available for you to use. So I think Olivia's there just giving you some panning. So this first floor that we're now looks over the...
Hold on, looks like we're having some issues.
Oh, it's just
Wi-Fi.
And we're back.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're good.
There we go. Yeah.
Good old technical issues. So, lights on. So this is Lab 1A. This is one of our biggest computing labs. I can't remember how many computers are in here now, but it's a lot. I mean, you actually see there's some students working in it right now. As I said, right, these labs are 24-hour access, 7 days a week. So it's fairly common that there's people always in here working towards their assessments or kind of whatever. Some of the highlights. So we've got state-of-the-art computers. We've recently refitted all of our labs. So all of these machines are high spec. They've got 3070s in. I can't remember the processor they've got. It's a decent one at least. And so they're really suitable for doing all kinds of different development, both from games and from computer science. So they're ready for Unreal Engine 5 from the game side, and they can be used for things like machine learning as well. I think that's the main highlights. You can see here actually, Oliver, if you pan to this, we recently did the Global Game Jam, which happened in January. And so again, we used these labs for the 48 hours during that game jam. Had a bunch of students come in to make some games and just make some projects during that time. I think that's a really nice thing that our students do quite a lot. So that was run by the Computer Science Society and by the Game Development Society. The school just helps facilitate that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a game jam that happened just this weekend, just gone. Is that correct, Luke?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. The theme was growth, and we didn't have a huge turnout, but we had a couple people make games or just work on their own projects throughout.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's one of the really crucial aspects of the School of Computer Science is it's quite a close-knit community, and that's something you'd be joining if you end up coming here. There's always different events that our students are arranging. So we're just going to go into one of our other computer labs now. So this is one that the game students will spend a fair bit of time in. It's not exclusively for game students, but it's themed around games at least. And yes, so this is a good room for game development at least. So we're going to sit over here at the videos on the left here. So a bit of a whirlwind tour of our campus or of this building, but kind of we've shown you the highlights, right? The key bits in this building and the place you'd be spending a lot of your time at least. But yeah, it's nice to be in such a new building, is what I will say. I'm not sure if Ali or Luke have anything they want to add to that.
Yeah, it's a really nice building. I didn't get to see much of it before I joined because it only opened the year that I started here, and kind of because it's been about 5 years now. In that time, I've got to see how it's changed over time, and so when stuff needs upgrading, it gets upgraded. Everything that we've got in the labs is like brand new. We literally installed it this summer, so they're always focused on how can this building be better and how can it work best for us as students.
I, on the other hand, have had this building since I started, so I've kind of seen what was just shown go from what it was to what it was, but with better setups.
Yeah, I think so. So something that both Ali and Luke have highlighted there is we're constantly investing and making sure our labs kind of fit whatever the current needs are of our students, right, and of the industry by and large. So again, all of our computers have our lab image, which has all of the kind of software you'd need for both computer science and games computing, and then we're making sure our computers can handle whatever that latest software is.
Yep. For instance, also, if you need a specific software to be installed on the labs, you can always contact the technicians. We've got dedicated technicians making sure the labs are updated and making sure that everything's up and running. And you can always contact them and have a chat and say, hey, I'd like this particular piece of software. And they're going to go great lengths to ensure that you guys get what is needed.
Yeah, the technicians are great here as well. I'm almost certain that they're watching this. And I wasn't going to say that, but on top of that, I would say that I spend most of my time in the IMB, and I absolutely love it in there. There's just, it's got everything you need, really.
That's a good question that just came up. The remote access is 24 hours as well. Generally, it's never down. There's the odd issue, but the techs, you can ping them through various means and they get on that really quick.
Yeah, we have an absolutely fantastic technician team that are highly responsive on a bunch of different social medias, so it's quite easy to reach them. And just the other thing I wanted to touch on that Ali kind of mentioned, and it's a sentiment I've seen expressed by a lot of students, is basically it's just nice. Like the IMB building is a nice space to just exist in. Even if you're not here specifically for lectures or to do work, it's just a nice space to sit down and kind of catch up on whatever you want, whatever other things you might do as a student.
It's also not exclusively for computer science. It is shared between other sciences and engineering, so it's a good place to just see other people if you want to meet people who aren't on your course.
Yeah, also it being central to Lincoln. Very often, whenever I tell my friends to meet somewhere in Lincoln, and I'm saying somewhere downhill, I usually say on campus, in front of the INB building, since it is a striking building that stands out, it's easy to find, so people know exactly where to meet. All right, so let's move over to the program talks. I'm gonna hand over to Kieran. So first, we're gonna talk about games computing, and then we're gonna move over to computer science. And as usual, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go along. So, Kieran.
Fantastic. Right, so let me just grab this laptop and make sure I don't knock the HDMI. And then, I'll sit. Olivier's standing up, lucky. So, as I've already introduced myself, I'm just going to reiterate. I'm currently the program lead for the Games Computing program, which is what I'm talking about today. And so here at Lincoln, we offer a couple of different variations of this program. You might have already seen there's the MComp variant and the BSc. There's also a version where you do a placement as well. I think Olivier is going to mention some placement stuff later on, so I won't go into that too much now. So this talk will basically just kind of give you a little brief oversight of what the Games Computing program is and kind of some of the unique selling points of it. So Games Computing. Obviously, we sit in the School of Computer Science. That should be abundantly clear at this point in the talk. And so it's very much a program-heavy course, right? It's about the computer science-heavy aspects of games development. So on this degree, you will learn how to make games, but you will mainly learn how to make games from that programmer angle. We don't really spend much time around art assets.
Cool. Hold on, Kieran, if you can still hear me. Oh dear. Just to add on to the remote access system. Oh.
Am I back?
The system I'm just adding something to the remote access question quickly. The remote access system we use is called Splashtop. It's very well maintained by the technicians.
So obviously, we have remote access, and typically it works, and we have a bunch of specific PCs set up for remote access, so you don't have to run an issue of someone trying to log in physically onto the computer you're using. As I was saying, our course is a program-heavy course. We focus on the programming side of things. We don't look too much at things like asset creation or kind of animation or anything like that. But what we do kind of focus on additionally is the kind of game design side, because we basically think it's crucial, right, for any programmer who's working in the games industry to also understand enough about games design so that they can actually implement whatever the ideas are something that will be good to play eventually. again, to keep it short, it's computer science, but with a games focus. I think one thing worth highlighting, and this is a relatively new kind of change in the kind of games industry, at least, is now the skill sets of games developers isn't just exclusive to the industry, to the games industry, that is. There's now that skill set's actually demanded elsewhere, particularly in media, right, and linear linear productions like kind of TV shows and movies and etc. So things like the Mandalorian, obviously massively successful TV show, was built off of game engine kind of architecture, right? So a lot of the interesting kind of scenes in that show are filmed using Unreal Engine, and they use game developers to do that because they're trained in that skill set, but people in linear media typically aren't. So there's a nice kind of transition now of game skill sets outside just the scope of games. I think that's worth pointing out, right? So you're not just limited to being a gameplay programmer. You're kind of, the world is almost your oyster in the skills that you have from this course. And because we do sit inside the School of Computer Science, and we have such a program-heavy focus, you're also, when you graduate after your 3 years, you will have a really strong skill set of, in terms of software development. So if you decided to, hop to a non-games industry-related role, you wouldn't struggle with that either. Right? You could be a programmer in pretty much any company with most languages as well. So I want to focus a little bit on what the actual course structure looks like, because I think that's something that most applicants are really interested in. So in the first year for the games course, you kind of see that you have things like programming fundamentals, maths for computing, and object-oriented programming. And so those modules that you see on the slides, hopefully they're gray. And so what that kind of denotes is that they're shared between both our games computing students and our computer science students. Then you'll see some of the green modules, they're very game specific, and they're core modules for game students only. And so that includes things like game studies, where we kind of look at trying to understand how people research games in general, just to give you that kind of underpinning to help with your development. And then there's a first year module that both me and Olivier teach on, actually, called games development. And so that's typically one of the modules where, if you've never made games before, that's the first time you're making games. And so what we currently do with that module, at least, is we basically teach you how to make a game in Unity over the course of the semester. And then you should hopefully have a really nice portfolio piece after you finish that module that you can chuck on your portfolio. And that's going to be something really useful for when you're finished.
Just to add, that module wasn't a thing when I did my first year. We just had game design and game studies, but my understanding is that it's a really popular module now already.
Yeah. So I think that actually highlights something that, I think is, again, one of the really unique selling points of our course is we're a really agile course. And we have to be, because of the games industry. Game industry changes constantly, so we have to, look at our course and reflect and change it where we see. So games development was one of these modules we added because basically the industry was saying we need graduates with this skill set, and we needed time to be able to develop that over the 3 years. So we slapped that first year module in, and as Luke said, it's now a really popular module because it involves making games over the semester, and everyone that's on the games course probably wants to make games. So for second year, there's a bunch of shared modules with CS again, but then there's some interesting things like concept development, where we really focus on how we do design games and the process we use for that design, and then things like games programming, where we get a bit more into the nitty gritty of making games and actually dealing with some of the low level stuff. And then finally, in your third year, you'll see we've got a couple more game specific modules. We've got graphics, which focuses on kind of like things like shader creation and working with things like the Unreal Engine to kind of make it so your game's optimized, which again is quite an important thing in the industry. And then another module that I teach on, called procedural content generation, is where we focus on actually using algorithms to dynamically generate content at runtime. And we see this in lots of very popular games like Minecraft and No Man's Sky. Like little elements of procedural content generation are pretty much everywhere in the games industry nowadays. There is also some optional modules, but I'm not going to talk about them too much now because Olivier is going to mention them in the CS part of the talk.
Do you mind me just jumping in quickly, Kieran? We've had a question.
Please do.
Just saying about, will we learn games computing in the computer science course? And as you can see from what Kieran had on the previous screen, there's a lot of module overlap for computer science and games computing. So there are only a few modules that, there's some modules that games computing students do that are different to computer science. But if you are interested and you're studying the computer science course, some lecturers will let you just, sit in the lectures, sit in the workshops. That's fine. You won't be assessed on that because that's not the course that you're paying for. And then in your third year, you have 2 optional modules, which again, Olivier will go into more detail on, and your project. And you have the freedom to pick what you want to do. So if you want to pick more games focused modules, you can. And we have computer science students do their projects on games theories every single year. There's some at the moment. There's someone doing their project on anti-cheats. There's another doing their project on music in video games, and they both study computer science. So yeah, if you're interested, then there's definitely scope for you to do that on the computer science course.
Yeah, cheers for that. Sorry, go.
Team software engineering lets you pick a topic, and quite a few teams, even ones which aren't made up of game students, end up making a game for that.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly what I was going to highlight. Is so, as both Luke and Ali said, there's team software engineering where you can kind of work on making games, even if you're on the CS degree. There's the project in your third year where you can specify it into a games project if you want as a CS student. For example, I'm currently supervising a CS student who's making a procedural dungeon crawler. And so again, they come from a computer science background, but they're doing a games development third year project. And then there are optional modules that you can take as well to kind of further specialize into that area if you want. And then I will be quick just to wrap up because I know Olivier's got lots to say as well. So lastly, in terms of career options, I think, we're really proud of the graduate outcomes we have on this games program. A lot of our graduates go into the industry. They typically stay in the UK, but that's because the UK has such a great games industry as well. And so we've had graduates kind of land jobs at Rockstar, Rare, Rebellion, TT Games, Buster Studios, Criterion. A lot of the big games companies in the UK, our graduates currently work there or have worked there recently. So yeah, it's a good cause, but I am biased. So I'm going to pass over to Olivier. He's going to talk about the computer science course.
Hello again. So yes, I'm going to talk briefly about the computer science course, but of course, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. So computer science.
We have actually had another question. Sorry to interrupt you again. In terms of the complexity for your project in your final year, that's your dissertation. I think most courses at university will have a dissertation, and it's worth 3 modules, so kind of 3 modules worth of work. It's not the easiest for me to explain because I've only done it once. If Olivier has anything else to add on to what kind of complexity or scope the project would have to be.
Oh, it can be as complex as you want. The idea is for you to find a topic that you're really interested in, for you to dig into that topic in your spare time. So for instance, somebody mentioned, Ali, it was you mentioned earlier that somebody was doing a project in dynamic music systems. And there is one of the students that I supervise. He is a computer science student. And he thought, let's look at algorithms that exist in machine learning to understand situations and apply them within a games computing environment. So he took something that is really complex and managed to squeeze it into a more playful environment, creating a very interesting project. So he was able to look at machine learning algorithms and game design and squish and merge the two together. So it can be as complex as you want, but the supervisor will be there to rein you in, to make sure that you don't go too complex, that you manage to still finish the project in time. So there's always a supervisor making sure that you get the most out of your project. Hope that answers the questions. Yep. So I'm going to continue. So what you're going to do in computer science, what the areas that you're going to develop at the University of Lincoln. You're going to look at robotics. You're going to look a lot at artificial intelligence. I mentioned machine learning. There will be a lot of programming in C#, C++, Python. There's also a lot of parallel programming, a lot of cloud development, a lot of networking and cyber theory, a lot of computer vision. So it's just a couple of areas that you're going to develop when you take the course of computer science at the University of Lincoln. Because, for instance, as Kieran mentioned, a couple of the modules are shared in your first year. For instance, programming fundamental, where you learn the basics of programming. Same for maths, object-oriented coding. Those are things that are with games computing. But at the same time, you still create, you learn new skills about programming, you develop them, and then you apply them in more CS-oriented of things, such as algorithms and complexity, where you don't only look at algorithms, but you start thinking, hey, that is a really good algorithm, but it needs too much time to compute. How can we take that algorithm and make it more efficient so that it runs on smaller machines, that needs less iteration to go through, to make sure that it runs as efficient as possible? You're going to also explore things like computer architecture, trying to understand the different processes, how the data types work, how the different signal works, which then leads into year 2 with advanced programming, network fundamentals, scalable database systems, more networking with cloud computing, more HCI stuff with user experience design, and quite a lot of artificial intelligence. And there is a little project, actually a project that spans semester A and semester B, where you work within a team mimicking and trying to solve real life problems, such as navigation systems for ambulances. So there's plenty of projects available. It's up to you as a team to find out which problem area you'd like to tackle and find a solution for it. In year 3, you're doing machine learning, big data. There's also 2 optional modules where you get a choice of modules that you can pick. And there's also parallel programming. I'll talk about about the options in a minute. The project, as mentioned earlier, spans semester A and semester B, and you get to choose any topic that you'd like to dig into, from machine learning to robotics to even games computing. Pick something that you're interested in, meet your supervisor regularly, and create a project that you're really proud of to put in your portfolio afterwards. I spotted there's a question in the chat by Henry Wright. He says, I am currently doing my computer science project in Java. When starting the course, will there be opportunities to pick up other languages? Yes, there's plenty of opportunities to pick other languages. There's nothing wrong at all to start the course with some knowledge of programming. Be able to pick any languages such as C++, C#, and if you're interested in games development, you can also learn bits about Unity, which uses C#, same for Unreal. There are plenty of opportunities to pick up other languages, but also what you learn at the University of Lincoln, at the School of Computer Science, is also to look at problems and start thinking, hey, I'd like this problem, I'd like to take it apart and find a solution for it that you can then apply in either Java, in C++, in C#, in any other coding languages that you want to solve that problem in. So for instance, Luke, you started with C# in your first year, and then you moved over to C++.
I started with zero knowledge going in, and we started at Python. People who already knew the basics of programming could basically skip that entirely, and then we were on C#.
There's also plenty of opportunities through the CSS Society to even do even more bigger programming projects. For instance, we mentioned the game jams, there's a couple of hackathons, so there's plenty of ways for you to learn more about programming.
Yeah, at the moment we start with Python because it gets everyone, it's just easy to get everyone on the same level. We move on to C#, which is what I'm doing with my first years at the moment. In the second year, you'll touch some C++ unless you do games, and I think you touch it in first year. I could be wrong. And then there are lots of opportunities to learn other languages. We don't teach JavaScript at all, but that's ended up being what I do most of my work in, which I hate, but never mind. Horrible language, but anyway.
You hate it with passion, but you love it at the same time.
Yeah, so there's lots of to do other languages, definitely.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So let's move on. I mentioned the word option a few times. Optional modules. Kieran mentioned it as well. Those are modules that you can choose and pick when you go into third year. So for instance, we've got modules such as in semester A, you get to do graphics. Yes, you get to do Unreal if you want as an optional module when you're taking CS. You can do virtual and augmented reality, or do and dig even deeper into image processing. Otherwise, in semester B, we've got modules such as autonomous mobile robotics, cybersecurity, physics simulation, which I teach, logic and computation. So you get a choice between those modules. So of course, you're more than welcome to pick a couple of modules. You will only be assessed in one of them, and you can always contact the lecturer and say, hey, I'm currently doing virtual and augmented reality. I'd like to know more about graphics. Can you hand me the slides, some reading materials, and get to know more about a topic?
It's also worth noting that the course changes every now and then just to keep everything as up to date as possible. So the modules that are available might change a little bit. The VR and AR module was only added when I was in my third year, so 3 years ago. And there was, and at that time as well, the other module I did isn't on here anymore. It might be run in future years, but it's not.
Yeah, as Kieran mentioned, we change our content, our modules according to the needs of the industry. So if the industry pops in and says, hey, we need more of this particular type of skills, we'll adapt our course. All right, one question that popped up in the chat is, what does a typical week look like? And that applies both to CS and games computing. So for instance, on Monday morning, you start university, for instance, at 10 a.m. You've got a 2-hour lecture, face-to-face on campus, where you interact with the lecturer, where you learn more about the topic that's being discussed. And then it's followed by a 2-hour workshop where you go from the lecture theater into the computer room, and then you work on the subject as you're just being taught about. So for instance, if the subject was programming in C++, then the workshop will be about C++ programming, and the lecture will be there, followed, supported by demonstrators, in other words, other students who have done the course before, and they will help you better understand and apply what you've just learned. So that would be a typical day on Monday, 4 hours of spending time at university. Of course, you can then spend more time by spending more time on campus, or for instance, meeting your friends in the atrium, or coming back to the computer labs, working a bit longer on those workshops. That's totally fine. Another example would be then Tuesday, that's a 1-hour face-to-face lecture, followed by another lecture in a different room, different area of the campus for another hour. Wednesday morning would be, for instance, 2 hours workshop about the lecture that you've done the day before. And then Wednesday afternoon, why not organize something with your friends, organize something with the societies? So for instance, you could meet up people from the CSS society, enjoy a little bit of hackathon with them, discuss the different modules, make friends. That's absolutely fantastic. Then it's followed by a similar thing on Thursday with more workshop, and then perhaps 15 minutes of personal tutoring where you're meeting an academic that is linked to you from the very first year, and you can discuss your academic progress with them. And then Friday, spend the time perhaps in the computer lab, self-directed 2 hours, and then check the libraries to find the newest books about C++ programming or games design. Yes, I'm talking the newest book about C++. I absolutely love that old book from the early 90s that I keep referring to, which I still say is the newest book. Anyway, there's a question in the chat from Robert. Are the lecture halls accessible for wheelchair users? That's a very good question. And yes, they all are accessible for wheelchair users. And as well, if you've got any needs, any special needs, you can always contact staff members to ensure that all the needs are fulfilled. And Kieran is chiming in as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in on this one. So in addition to all of our lecture halls being accessible, all the buildings are accessible, which is obviously kind of expected as a bare minimum, but also all of our computer labs are also accessible as well. So we have a bunch of basically desks that are wheelchair accessible and are designed for that in mind. So I think that's worth just highlighting as well.
Yep, brilliant. So that's a typical week at the university. We also got plenty of placement opportunities. So for instance, between year 2 and year 3, what you can do is say, hey, I'd like to do a placement. So we've got a dedicated placement officer who will help you to find a placement. Otherwise, you can find a placement yourself. Just say, hey, I've got this particular company who offered me a placement. I'd like to work with them. So what happens? You can find a placement for over 12 months, so between year 2 and year 3, or you can find a summer placement. So for instance, between year 2, year 3, or year 1, year 2. We've had plenty of placement opportunities. So for instance, we had people working at BT, we had people working at the NHS, working on navigation systems, we had people working at Sports Direct, people working at CGI, people working at Cisco, and those provide you excellent experiences. Actually, I still remember going to a couple of placement visits, and I met the student at the end of the placement year. He was so happy, he learned so much. And the job, actually, they said, hey, whenever you finish your third year, send us an email. We're happy to take you full-time on board. So it's a fantastic opportunity to not only make connections, but also make sure that you got something already set up for when you finish your university.
Can I add a tiny bit to that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so just, again, from the kind of games perspective, as program lead, so it's one of the things we've had. Obviously, a lot of our students have graduated and then gone into roles in the games industry. And now what's happened is those companies that have hired our students are now saying, do you have students that could potentially intern during their years, between years 2 and 3, or summer internships? And so we have a really good working relationship with a bunch of UK games companies like Rare and Rockstar that kind of, we can't guarantee placements. Obviously, they're really competitive, but we have good collaborations with those companies.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Kieran. So that takes off computer science. But now I'd like to hand the floor over to you guys. I know we've answered a handful of questions already. But if you guys have got more questions, feel free to ask in the chat. Kieran and I will answer them. Luke is there as well. Ali as well. If you don't have any questions, we've got a couple of frequently asked questions that a lot of people ask every open day, every offer hold day. If you've got any question, ask them in the chat. However, the standard questions that we get a lot is, what would you tell your younger self 3 years ago before they started university? So Luke, what would you say your younger self 3 years ago? Same for Ali, 4, 5, 6 years ago before you started university.
6 years ago, how old do you think I am?
I think one of the main things I would have needed to tell myself is to not stress as much as I was. A little bit of stress is actually kind of a good thing to have when it comes to assignments, but I would, even in just the build up to being given an assignment, I would stress and make mistakes in just everything and kind of trip myself up. It's easy to not realize how much you're stressing when it's university and it's a completely new environment.
Oh, brilliant. I still remember you from your first year when you were about knee high and you were a bit unsure of yourself. You looked a bit lost. And 3 years later, you're doing live streams. You're the president of the CSS Society. You're doing a fantastic project in procedural content generation. You've done so much over those 3 years. So I'm sure there's plenty of things you can tell yourself, your younger self. Same for Ali. What would you say to your younger self about university?
Well, for me, it's less related to computer science and more just to actually join societies. And meet people and make friends, because as a computer scientist, I'm sure people watching can probably relate. I was quite introverted, and I didn't want to talk to people, and it just, my first 2 years here were just very kind of sad and lonely. And it wasn't, in fairness, the fault of the university, because I had endless opportunities to join societies and go out and do stuff, and I just didn't engage. And I can't recommend it strongly enough, because once I got to third year and started doing this kind of job, kind of speaking to prospective students, joining societies and everything, I made lots of friends, and I was like, oh, life's not so bad after all. So yeah, I do recommend it, and start with the Computer Science Society, because pretty much all my friends I've met through there. So yeah, I recommend it.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Another typical questions that we get, and we mentioned that a few times, is what if I have never done programming before?
I actually relate to this question pretty good. I specifically asked before going, or on one of the offer holder days, what languages would be taught in the first year so that I could get myself prepared ahead of time. And I was actually told, if you prepare too much, you're going to find first year really easy. And I didn't prepare at all. But I went into first year with literally zero programming experience, and I saw all of the people who had lots of experience doing all of these side projects and just doing everything super easily. And I started panicking. But now I've made it to third year. I'm getting firsts in most of my assignments. So not having any experience before does not matter in the slightest. The course is set up really well to support people who don't have the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the whole
exactly.
point of the course.
All right, Holly.
Sorry,
So,
I was
yeah,
just going to say it's the whole point of the course. It's 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 so that if you haven't programmed at all before, or done any maths, because that's something that people worry about, I think, we'll teach you from scratch, from the ground up. So try not to worry too much about it. Do some prep if you can, but I mean, Luke's fine, so.
On the flip side, though, if you have loads of experience and now think you'll find the course easy, the lecturers generally have plenty of little projects that you could ask to help with, or just suggestions on what you can do. It's really pushed, especially on games computing, to create a portfolio, and these extra projects you can do in the extra time you have it really helps you out.
Yeah, and that was the position I was in. I'd done programming before I came to uni, maybe not a lot, but like we have a comment at the moment that says they've done programming before, but not too much. That was pretty much the position I was in. I'd done some at sixth form, and that was kind of it. But I didn't find the course like way too easy or anything like that. Like, it was still a good challenge. It was still good fun.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Again, don't be afraid to put more questions in the channel and we'll answer them. But for now, the question is, what's next for you guys, for all our viewers? So what I recommend is to socialize with us, to check our YouTube page. You just go to YouTube, type in School of Computer Science, University of Lincoln, and you'll find plenty of talks related to computer science or games computing. So for instance, we had a couple of talks about the British, during the British Science Week, where we talked about writing more secure multiplayer games. We talked about crowd AI. We had other Enhancement Week talks, talking about robots in the wild. Kieran talked about what is player experiences. We talked about board games modalities, about games design of board games. And there's even more stuff happening. So for instance, you can look at other previous open offer holder day gaming events or other events that we've got on YouTube. We've got the Ben and Chris show. We've got talks about computing fundamentals. We've also got a couple of videos about meeting staff members and meeting other students at the School of Computer Science. So don't be afraid to socialize with us via YouTube. And also don't be afraid to interact with us by asking questions in the chat or sending us email. I will put my email in the chat so you can contact me directly and I will answer your questions, and even, if you guys want, organize a one-on-one chat over Teams or in person whenever you're visiting the campus. Also, don't be
I'll
afraid.
put my email address in the chat as well. So if anyone has any questions for students, I can pass them on to our ambassadors.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes, sir. I'm putting my email address in the chat. OS@YMEN easy to remember. I'll do that joke every time. So yeah, don't be afraid to contact me, to contact Kieran, the program leader. If you're not so sure who to contact Ali, and she will forward your email to the corresponding staff. As well, don't be afraid to follow us on Twitter and interact with us on Twitter. We've also got accounts on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. We're also on everywhere.
We're on Twitch.
On Twitch as well, yes. And also, if you're doing games development with us, we also got an online tutorial to get you into games development very quickly, very efficiently by creating a 2D jump and run game. And if you go to lncn.ac/ohd-games, if you can put it inside the chat, Luke or Ali, that'd be fantastic. You can follow a little tutorial to create your own 2D jump and run game. It's not only aimed for games computing students.
Yeah, anyone can do it.
Anyone can do it.
It's a nice kind of intro to kind of how we teach some of the games development skills on the course. And so yeah, it uses a web engine called Phaser, but it's a nice way of getting an intro to to gameplay programming.
Sorry, Luke, you've typed it in wrong.
Yep, I've just seen
I just copied it as well. It happens.
Yeah.
That's great.
There we go.
And we've got a couple of events coming up. So, for instance, we've got an event called Fang Games It's Friday. Kieran, since you're the one organizing it.
I will happily. So we've got this event coming up on the 29th of April called Fang Games It's Friday, which is basically where a few of the games academics, so the lecturers at the University of Lincoln that teach on the games programs, will be getting together to basically play some games. They're probably going to be playing things like Fall Guys, Dead by Daylight, maybe the marble game that I can never remember the name of that everyone always plays on streams. And the idea behind this is essentially a chance for you to get to know us as lecturers better, right? To kind of remove that barrier of us being these big, scary lecturers. At the end of the day, we're just people that like to play games as well as make them. And so it's a great chance, if you've applied for the games program or if you've applied for the computer science program and you just want to chat with some of the lecturers that you will kind of have dealings with throughout the 3 years of your undergrad, then come along, ask us questions about the course, what it's like to study, what our favorite games are, whatever you feel like. It's a nice kind of slightly informal, friendly way to interact with us.
Yep.
So yeah, I hope to see everyone there.
It's on the 29th of April on a Friday, as the name suggests. Thanks again, it's Friday, from 5 p.m. onwards, and we'll be streaming for 2 hours. So this leads towards the end of this virtual offer holder day activity. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Luke. Thank you very much, Ali, Kieran.
You're welcome.
That's brilliant. If you guys got any more questions, we're going to stay in the chat for a couple more minutes. And then we're going to close it off. Again, don't be afraid to contact us via email, interact with us via YouTube and all other social network pages that we've got. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you very much, guys. I'll stay in the chat and answer questions if they pop up. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Ali. Bye, Luke. Bye, Kieran.
Bye.